And we're live. Hi, everyone. I am really excited about today's webinar. I know I was so excited about today's webinar. As usual, I'm so happy that you guys are telling us where you're from. It's so nice to see that there's people from my side of the world and from the States too. So good morning and good evening to everyone. As you know, today we are talking about Google Analytics. And I don't think I could have brought on a better expert than Krista here, who I actually met in, it was in Amsterdam. We met in Amsterdam at a conference where we both spoke, and I was blown away by Krista because her knowledge is amazing. I'm definitely going to let her introduce herself. But before I do that, as you know, guys, I always love to ask this question when we get started. So I'd love you guys to rate from 1 to 5 how you feel about your knowledge of Google Analytics right now. So 1 being, I'm just getting started, playing around with it. 5 being, I'm an expert, okay? Or I feel really good and confident about Google Analytics. And I love seeing that come in because it's really helpful to just see you guys. I'm seeing a lot of 2.5s and 3s and 4s and quite a few 1s, which is great because our webinar today has content for everyone. So wherever you are on that spectrum between 1 and 5, we're going to help you out. And we're going to run for about 35 to 40 minutes, and then we're going to take your questions. So if you have any questions, post them here in the chat. And also, if you'd like, you can follow our Twitter hashtag, which is GetUplift, and we'll be answering questions straight after. Yeah, I think I've covered everything. Questions in the chat. Krista, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to make sure everybody can see it.
Right now would be a very good time for you guys just to let us know that you can hear us and see us well. They're not just talking to ourselves.
All right. Wonderful. I think we can see. How are we doing, Talia?
So I can see, perfect. I can see your presentation. Now we can see the slides, and I think we are good to go.
Awesome. So when Talia first asked me to come, she wanted me to talk about Google Analytics and using analytics to drive action. That is a topic that is very near and dear to me. I talk often about optimization and how you can use analytics for optimization. And so today I'm going to talk to you about how to turn insights into action. So a little bit about me. I kind of have 2 roles at Google right now. I'm the analytics advocate for Google, which means that I do a lot of speaking and teaching and training on Google Analytics and Google Optimize and all of the different products in our measurement org. And I'm also a product manager for Google Analytics. It's really cool, kind of a dual role where I actually talk to all of the customers, learn from them, hear what's going right, going wrong, where we could do better, and then I get to take all that feedback and come right back and actually build features that I'm hearing from the market. Prior to this role, which I've been in for a few years, I actually internal practitioner of analytics and optimization. In general, I've been in the analytics and optimization space for about a decade. And I spent time here at Google running internal teams and at a few other companies. I'm also really involved in the Digital Analytics Association, and I care passionately about women in tech and women in analytics, and I'm a huge advocate for those movements. You can follow me on Twitter at Krista Seiden. And as Talia mentioned, if you want to tweet along with the GetUplift hashtag, also mention me. I'd love to follow along and read about that after and retweet a lot of this really great content. And I also blog at KristaSeiden.com. So as I mentioned, I am talking about how to turn insights into action. But since the holidays are coming up and I was feeling a little bit extra cheerful this week, I decided to actually theme this presentation, the 10 ways to move from the naughty to the nice list. And I love this little cartoon at the bottom. In case you can't see what the text at the bottom says, the naughty list is totally empty, and it said they had their names removed using the right to be forgotten. So a little Christmas humor to kick us off in the analytics space there. Okay, so naughty number 1. You have untagged email, social media, or online advertising. How can you fix this? So to move from naughty to nice in this category, you want to be sure that you are using campaign tagging to distinguish between all of the different variations of your social media posts, your emails, all of the different marketing efforts that you have online. So how can we do that? Well, for email testing, you can tag the different CTAs in your emails, and the links that are going out from your emails to your websites for different headline copy or email copy or different CTAs. So for example, let's say that you have an email where you are testing out 2 different offers. And in one email, you give a 50% off code, and in another, you give a $10 off code. And you want to know which offer drives more people to your website. In your CTA or your link out to your website, you want to make sure that your campaign tagging includes about which offer they received in the email. That way, when they come to your site and they go down your conversion funnel and actually convert, you'll know which one of those offers actually did better from email all the way to conversion. Similarly, with ad testing, you want to use the UTM content slots. So UTM fields, campaign tagging, there are a number of fields. There's source, medium, campaign, and content. And in this case, you want to use that content slot, which is kind of like a little extra bonus field to denote the ad variation. So similarly, if you had testing 2 different offers through that ad, use that content field to denote which ad version they saw. And this can actually be in addition to auto tagging. So we would definitely recommend that you're using auto tagging with any type of ad campaigns that you have out in the market. But you can override your fields in your Google Analytics settings specifically for the content slot and use that to denote the variation. And then finally here is social media. So you want to tag each post with unique campaign tagging parameters so that you can ensure that you actually know which post at which time of day on which social media network was driving the most value for you. So here you can see in this screenshot, this is an example of my personal blog. And here you can see that I have posts for both Twitter and Google+. My source, and my medium is social. And in my content slot, I actually used the title of the article. Additionally, you can also, in the content slot, add a date and a timestamp or whatever other information you want in there. But for me personally, this is really useful because I can start to analyze which types of articles get the most traction on which types of social networks. So in this case, through this analysis, what I've actually seen over time is that, and you know, this is maybe a little bit dated because we're not using Google+ quite as much these days, but in general, Plus actually has a very large Google Tag Manager community. They're very active in there, even though a lot of other areas of the platform have kind of calmed down in the past couple of years. But my content on Google Plus for Tag Manager type posts actually gets shared quite often, and I get a lot of visitors coming from Google Plus on content that is related to Google Tag Manager, whereas Twitter, for the most part, sends the rest of my social media traffic to my blog based on, you know, a number of other types of articles that I post. So this is a cool insight that I wouldn't have known if I didn't use the source, medium, and odd content fields here to distinguish which networks were sending which type to my site. Okay, naughty number 2. You have a poorly organized site structure. And fix this using the data layer to collect custom information. Now, the data layer is a part of Google Tag Manager or some other tag management systems, and it's a way to collect additional information along with what you're collecting through your Tag Manager snippet and send that information to a number of different places. So the data layer here, this is an example. And this is what we want to use. This is hard-coded on your pages. And in this case, I'm going to walk you through an example of how this could be useful to you. So Sorry about that. My slides are moving a little slow. There we go. I live in San Francisco, and sometimes I have a craving for different types of food to be delivered. And in this case, I'm really interested in Italian food in San Francisco. And my fiance works at Postmates, so he would probably kill me if I ordered it from any other food delivery service. Postmates is a local one here in the Bay Area. So I add that to my Google search. And in this case, the first one that comes up is Tommaso's restaurant in San Francisco. It's an Italian. That looks good. I click through to that, and I get to their page on Postmates site. And it's great. That lasagna looks wonderful. I see their menu is listed below. I'm gonna probably order through here. But now let's shift my mindset to analyst. Now, as an analyst, when I analyzing this data set, do things like understand which types of food are most popular in which cities, I rely heavily on the organization of my site structure. And in this case, the organization URL structure. So if we focus in here, the URL for this page is Tommaso's Restaurant San Francisco. There's no other subdirectories there. It doesn't give me any information or any drill down within that page architecture for a city or a type of food. So as an analyst, this poses a real problem. And if you were to go through a lot of their other URLs, I think we would find a lot of similar things where they don't have this type of directory structure. So I wouldn't be able to do the type of analysis I need to do to inform my stakeholders about these key pieces of insight that we want to gather and potentially use for promoting certain types of food to certain cities. But that's where the data layer comes in. So in this case, I've actually added a couple things to my data layer. I'm collecting something for city, and it's populated for San Francisco in this case. And my page subcategory here is Italian, and this is the type of food that I'm interested in. And now I can send that information to Google Analytics through a custom dimension, and then use that information to slice and dice my pages report and get a whole lot more information about the types of food that are most interesting to different types of customers in different cities. And then I can go ahead and use that information to actually drive those actions that I was looking for. All right, naughty number 3. We have untagged A/B testing variations. So this is really bad. You obviously want to know which variations are driving the most impact for your site above and beyond just the actual conversion of the goal you're looking at on that test variation. So in this case, we are going to use the data layer again to collect our test IDs. So here we have our data layer, and in this case, I've added something called an EID, and that stands for experiment ID. And here, this is index.html. This is just my, my homepage or my control. But in any of my test variations, I would actually replace index.html with a experiment ID. So this is a custom report in Google Analytics. And in this case, I'm showing you a custom report of a bunch of tests that I ran during my time in the Google for Work, now actually called the G Suite org, optimizing their websites. And you can see here on the left-hand side, I've just blown it up, we have a letter and number combination. And this is actually 2 different data layer elements that I've concatenated into a single custom dimension. So I had one to collect an experiment name, and in this case, the experiment name was contact us versus talk to an expert, as well as an EID to collect the experiment number. And when I concatenate them, I can actually start to do a lot of analysis here. So I have the test that it all rolls up into. So in this case, all 4 of these variations are from the contact us versus talk to an expert test. And I have the different numbers. So there's number 3, 2, 3, 9, and 8 here in order. And now I can look at all of my different site goals and the things that I'm measuring across all of these variations in a custom report. It makes my analysis much easier here and much better to see all of this side by side and organized by test number and test name. And as a little bonus, if you are using Google Optimize, which is our A/B testing platform that's integrated with Google Analytics, you actually don't need to use the data layer to do this, because we are sending this information out of the box from an optimized test to Google Analytics already for you. So in the screenshot, you can see that we are sending an experiment ID and an experiment name under behavior. And we also have a variant ID on the bottom right, where you can add a secondary dimension of variant and organize your different tests by which variant you had, 0 being the control and any numbers above that being the number of the variation. So it's a pretty cool little addition to that platform that's been built in. Okay, naughty number 4. You have a little idea of your site engagement. So to fix this, you are going to use the brand new scroll tracking and element visibility triggers that have just been released in Google Tag Manager. So a little backstory on these triggers. We've been working on these for quite some time here on the Tag Manager and the analytics team, and I literally could not be more excited for these. If anybody on this webinar has ever implemented scroll tracking for Google Analytics, you will know that prior to this, it has been quite a complicated process. There's a lot of code involved. You basically have to Google Google Analytics scroll tracking and find a couple of blog posts. Lunametrics has one, Justin Catroni has one. There's a few different blog posts out there with kind of best practices of how you could do this, but it's complicated. And if your site structure changes, names change, different things, like you could totally mess this up. So the new scroll tracking triggers are very exciting because they work very, very simply. So here I have a screenshot. In the background, we have the Google Tag Manager tag that's being set up to track this. And you can see that I've just chosen a tag type of Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, as I would do for any type of tag I'm setting up for Google Analytics. My track type is an event. I'm going to send all of my scroll tracking information as an event to Google Analytics. I've named my event category scroll tracking, so everything rolls up into scroll tracking. My action is going to be the scroll depth threshold, and this is a new variable that has been built into Google Tag Manager along with this new trigger. And with this variable, you can actually set the threshold for each time you want this event to fire. So in my case, I set it for 25, 50, 75, and 100% of the page scroll depth. But if you have a really long site or you really care about much more granular depth, you can set it to anything you want, 10, 20, 30, 40%, and it will fire every single time it's reached one of those thresholds. And then finally, my label for this event is the page path. So basically, I want to know where this event is being fired. And then in the foreground, you can see that I actually tested this out. I sent an event, or I went to my website and I started scrolling down my page. You can see there's one person on the website, and we have our event category that's actually being fired in real time. This is through real-time analytics. I was able to actually test this out. And you can see I had my 25, 50, 75, and 100% events that were all sent. Super exciting. And the best part about this trigger is that I actually set all of this up, including testing, in about 5 minutes. And it probably would have taken me less time, but I kept stopping to take screenshots so that I could write a blog post about it. So I think this is a huge, huge benefit for marketers and for websites out there all over to really understand how far people are making it down your page and what they're engaging in. And it just makes scroll tracking so much more accessible. The other really cool trigger that Google Tag Manager has just released is the new element visibility trigger. So this is similar to scroll tracking. The way you set it up is very similar. In the background screenshot, you can see we have our tag type of Universal Analytics, our track type of event, again, sending this as an event to Google Analytics. In this case, I decided that I wanted to send an event to Google Analytics every time on my website the newsletter subscribe box was visible for more than 2 seconds, is what I set that threshold at. Basically, I want to know if people have the opportunity, they've seen this newsletter subscribe box so that I can start to get an idea of the percentage rate at which I'm converting people to be subscribers to my website. Pretty cool use case here. I think for me personally, this is something that I definitely want to know on my website. So I've titled the action of this newsletter subscribe visible. And then my label is just where this happened. I have a lot of different pages on my site. My newsletter subscribe box is on a lot of them. And so I want to know which page on the site this happens on. And then really how this is comes to fruition is through the element visibility trigger, which you can see at the bottom of that. That is just something that you set up based on an element ID or a CSS selector. In my case, I set it up based on an element ID, which means that I just went to my newsletter subscribe box and I inspected the element to figure out what the ID of the form was. And I use that for my trigger. And basically what it does is it says, when it sees this form or this element ID visible on the page for more than 2 seconds, it's gonna fire this event. So again, I think that this is another way to make things that typically would have taken a lot more code and been much more fragile, that much more accessible to marketers and to a lot of smaller businesses and websites out there. So super excited about this one as well. Okay, naughty number 5. People are dropping out of your forms, but you don't know where. So in this case, we are going to use event tracking for form field interaction. So I've mentioned event tracking quite a bit already in this webinar, but I just wanted to take a step back maybe and explain event tracking a little bit more in case you're not as familiar with it. So event tracking comes with 3 fields that you can use. There's the category, and this is the location of the event or some higher level organization of it. It could be your homepage or your About Us page. In my example from scroll tracking, I actually used scroll tracking as the category because I wanted all of my different actions that are being sent to roll up into one single category that I could drill down through. Excuse me. The next level is the action. And this is the action that the users actually took on your website. So in this case, or in this example here, I have a video or a white paper download or starting trial. In my scroll tracking example, the action was that they made it to 25 or 50 or 75% of that page. So the final level of this hierarchy is label. And this is specifics about the action. So if your action had been that they watched a video, then the label should be something like the video name so that you know which video is being interacted with, or the white paper name, or details about some link that they might have clicked. In our scroll tracking example, the label was the page path or where this action actually took place. Okay, now that we have a better understanding of the organization of how event tracking works, I want to show you how you can actually use it for form field tracking. So this is a real example from the Google Analytics marketing website. I implemented this website with event tracking, and I have implemented it in the format that I just walked you through. So my event category is the high level, how the site is organized. We have our homepage and our tag manager overview page. Let's focus on number 8, the contact form. So if we drill in there, drilling in just means clicking on that line. We are going to be taken to the next level of the hierarchy, which is the action. So in this case, we have used the action to tell us which form or which product this person was on when they decided to contact our sales team. So we're sending, let's say, the Analytics 360 Suite page or the Data Studio page, or number 4 was that they actually clicked that they were interested in all of our products. So if we drill into one of these, let's drill into the first one, the Analytics 360 Suite. We are going to get to the label level, which is the last level of our hierarchy. So in this case, I am using the event label to actually notate the form field that the user was on. And I'm sending this when somebody has interacted with this field. So not just tabbed into it, but actually started to type. As soon as they start to type any character in this field, I'm sending this event to Google Analytics with that category, action, and label information with it. And what I've done here is tables in Google Analytics are typically sorted by the first column after the primary dimension. So the primary dimension in this case is the event label, and the first column here would be total events. So this report was initially sorted by total events. I've actually resorted it by unique events. You can see the drop-down arrow to the right of unique events in that column. That just means that that is the column it's being sorted on. And what you can see is that actually the unique events for this report correspond very nicely with going down through that form field. This is actually the order in which our form field is organized. First name, last name, job level, all of these different things. So I find a couple of things very interesting about this report. So the first thing that I find very interesting is line number 9, the submit label. Now, you can see that there are a lot more total events here than unique events. So there's 2,900 total events, 2,900 times that people were clicking the submit button, but only 569 unique times that it was actually submitted. So what that tells me is that people were actually trying to submit this form several times, but they were likely getting an error message that the form wasn't complete, so they couldn't actually submit it. And what I knew, but the site didn't necessarily portray, was that all of these fields were required with the exception of region, which was an optional field, and that's why it's lower. Everything else was required though, and we had small little asterisks, I think, next to each of these fields, but they weren't super prominent. So I actually took this information, this data, back to my design team, and I was like, hey, I think that we are maybe not making it clear enough that these fields are required. We should probably make it a bit more clear so that people don't have this confusion. They're not trying to submit this form multiple times. And so we actually made that change based on this data. So use event tracking here to be able to tell where people might be falling out, or if there's something like an error that is being thrown because of something, in this case, like not being clear enough that something is required. Okay, naughty number 6, no key performance indicator tracking. To fix this, we are going to use goals to track your marketing and website success. So I love goals. I speak often about what my favorite Google Analytics features are, and we've already covered 2 of them. Those were campaign tracking and event tracking. And my third favorite is actually goals, because I think they can be very, very useful in your analysis and in gaining insights to drive action for your businesses. So the first thing that you want to do is set up your goals. This is pretty easy to do. You do it in the admin section of Google Analytics. And as you're setting up a goal, you can actually set it up to be a conversion funnel. So in this case, I have a conversion funnel for back when I was in the G Suite org for our sign-up flow for Google Apps for Business. And in this case, it was a 3-page sign-up flow. And then once they got to the last page, they hit a submit button, and that was the completion of that flow. So I have all of those steps here in this funnel. And I can see that there are a lot of people who are on step 1, almost 5 million people. But there's a very significant drop-off between step 1 and step 2, and another pretty significant drop-off between step 2 and step 3. So I don't know exactly what is the problem here, and this is a case where I might want to use event tracking on those different form fields to see if there's one particular field that is making people exit on that page. But I do know that there is a problem. We seem to have a huge drop-off rate, and there's probably something that I can and should be doing to optimize that page. Maybe people don't have enough information from the website before they get into the flow, so they don't proceed to the second step. Or maybe when they get to that first page of the sign-up flow, what's presented there doesn't match their expectations or isn't clear enough, and so they're not proceeding. And I can do further analysis through event tracking and through other means of digging in to figure out what exactly the problem is, but this is that early indicator that something is wrong. So we've seen this screenshot before. This is that custom report that I talked about early on when we talked about using your experiment IDs in the data layer. But what I wanted to show you here is actually that I have used goals across the top as the different metrics that I am looking at. So I actually am using micro conversion goals, and all goals are the same in terms of setup, but I have deemed these to be micro conversions on my site. So they made it from page 1 to page 2 and 2 to page 3. And then my macro conversion, which in this case is that they've signed up for a trial of my product. So goals can be really, really useful here to track a lot of things. In this case, across a lot of different test names and variants, and across all of these different steps in one nice report. So this is the NextWeb. They are an online publisher based out of the Netherlands, and they are doing A/B testing very heavily, and they are using Google Analytics and Google Optimize, and they are using goals. So I wanted to show you the goals that they have for their website. Very typical publisher type goals, so that somebody made it 2 pages deep or 3 pages deep, or they scrolled all the way to the bottom of an article, or they have clicked a related article. Very publisher-centric goals here. But what's important about this is that they are using these goals as their objectives in Google Optimize. So one of the great things about Google Optimize is that it's actually built on top of a lot of the same infrastructure as Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. And your objectives in Google Optimize are the goals that you have set up in Google Analytics. So you can see they actually directly map because they are the same goals. So it's nice to know that when you're experimenting, you are driving towards the key performance indicators or the goals that you are already tracking on your website. Okay, naughty number 7 is not using analytics reports for optimization insights. So the way we are going to fix this is that we are going to use a few standard reports to quickly find areas of optimization. Now, up until now, I've gone through a lot of more in-depth reports or custom reports or custom data collection tactics, but I wanted to remind you that there are also standard reports or easy things out of the box that you can use to really gain insights and drive action for your website and for your businesses. So our first one is the devices report. And in this case, the device report is looking at desktop, tablet, and mobile. And it's looking at it across all of my different site actions here, my acquisition, behavior, and conversion type metrics in this report. And one of the things I love about these types of reports is that the far right, the conversion one, actually allows you to change the goals that you're looking at. So in this case, I'm looking at my goal for trial sign up. But I could change that and look at my goal for anything else that I'm tracking through goals in Google Analytics across my different devices or across a lot of other reports, because the same infrastructure works across a lot of Google Analytics reports. But in this case, I can see that my overall conversion rate is 0.92%, but the majority of that is being driven by desktop at 1.02%. Mobile and tablet are both significantly underperforming. And I happen to know that our mobile sign-up experience is not really optimized for mobile. It's just the website on mobile. And that is not an ideal scenario for mobile customers. But now I have the data to actually prove to my superiors that I need to actually spend some time and effort and resources to try to build a much more mobile optimized flow, because we have a significant amount of people coming to mobile, but they are not able to sign up. So the next standard report we want to look at is our browsers report. So in this case, we're looking at that same conversion rate of 0.92%. But when I look across browsers, I see that Internet Explorer is significantly underperforming my other browsers. Now, I'm not going to take the time here to make any jokes about how you, if you're using Internet Explorer, you're probably 90 years old. Just kidding. But, you know, we're going to click in here and get some more information. So I click in and I get my browser version report. And now I can actually pinpoint the problem. So I see there are a few versions that I know we are no longer supporting. But for example, version 8 still has a significant number of people that are coming to our site using it, but has a really low conversion rate because it's not being supported and it's not optimized for our content. So since we have so many people, there's probably two things that I could or should do here as an analyst, or as somebody who wants to fix this problem. I could go to my teams and say, hey, there's probably still a significant case for why we should support Internet Explorer version 8. Or I could maybe, if we are not going to support it, instead, when I notice that somebody is coming from Internet Explorer version 8, put some kind of a message on their site saying, hey, we're not supporting this version of your browser. You might want to update or use another browser to have the best experience on our site. Either way, we are being proactive in either supporting or letting people know that this is not the best version of this experience so that they have the opportunity to use a different browser or a different version to get a better experience and hopefully convert for our product. Okay. The next one is site search conversion rates. So this is actually a custom report, but site search is part of standard reports as well. And what I wanted to show you here was that in this case, the search term report is pulling in the different things that people are searching for on my website. This is something that's very easy to set up. It's not out of the box per se. You actually have to set up the site search functionality in Google Analytics. But you can do that through the admin settings, and it's as simple as changing a toggle from off to on and inserting your query parameter. And then we'll get all of the different search terms that people are actually typing into the search bar on your website. So in this case, I can see for the G Suite org, they were getting a lot of searches for Google Drive that led to the most signups in this case. But that content wasn't first and foremost on their website. So perhaps we should consider making Google Drive content more prominent because people are definitely searching for it. And when they're searching, they are converting. Okay, naughty number 8 is no visibility into your other Google tools that you're using. So if you're using Google Analytics, it's highly likely that you're using other Google tools as well. Hopefully you're using Google Tag Manager. We've talked about a lot of the benefits for that already, but there are many other things that you could be using. So to fix this, we want to ensure that you have all of your integrations set up. So the first integration that you want to set up is Search Console. So Search Console it used to be called Webmaster Tools. It's a way to submit a index or get Googlebot to index your page, and you can submit a sitemap and various things to Google, and it helps with your SEO efforts. But in this case, we want to bring that Search Console data into Google Analytics. And why this is really important, more so now than ever, is that in Google Analytics, and it's been true for some time, and it's actually true for all other analytics platforms as well, you don't get your organic search keywords from Google or from most of the other major search providers, because we now encrypt search. So it's HTTPS. And because of that, the organic keyword volume in Google Analytics has gone significantly down over time, and you don't have the ability to make informed decisions based on that data and who's coming to your website from which organic keywords. But with the Search Console integration, you can actually start to bring some of those search queries back into Google Analytics, because those search queries are available in Search Console. So definitely set up this integration. The next, if you are advertising with AdWords, you definitely want to set up the integration between AdWords and Google Analytics, because that brings your AdWords data into Google Analytics. And the benefit of this is that you can actually start to slice and dice your analytics data by your AdWords data and your AdWords data by your analytics data, giving you much more insight than you would get just through AdWords reporting into the overall behavior of your website and how these AdWords campaigns actually impacted that. Similarly, we have our double-click integration. So this is only available for Google Analytics 360 clients, so a paying client of Google Analytics. But this allows you to bring your DCM, DBM, DS, all of the different double-click suite tools into Google Analytics. And in this case, you can see that you have view-through and click-through data brought into Google Analytics. And again, you can analyze your DCM or DBM data along with your Google Analytics data side by side to get more information about how people are interacting on your site based on the campaigns that brought them there. So the last integration I have here is the Optimize 360 integration. So if you are using Google Analytics and you are using Optimize, the 360 version, again, the paid version of Optimize, you can actually use your Google Analytics audiences or the segments that you've built in Google Analytics as targeting options in Optimize. Now this is awesome because you've already done a lot of effort. You already put in a lot of effort to analyze the different segments of customers that you find important on your website. For example, for a travel company, you might have platinum, gold, and silver tiered rewards members. And you might want to serve each of those different tiers different experiences on your website. So using Optimize, you can build your different variations and run an A/B test, but you can also target those different variations to your different audiences. So you can serve platinum members a different experience than you serve gold members, and different experience than you serve silver members. I think that's a really, really cool benefit and a way to drive more personalization with this platform. Okay, naughty number 9, you don't listen to your customers quantitatively. Okay, so I mentioned site search earlier, but this is actually the standard site search report. And this is looking at data for my own blog. And what I like about this is I'm looking at the top search terms for my blog. So I can see here a lot of people are actually searching for Tag Manager or Google Tag Manager or GTM. This is something that I blog about often, but clearly it's highly interesting content to my users. And so perhaps I should consider blogging about this topic more often. And that insight is being driven by the data that I have here in my search terms report, or by the information that I know people are searching for on my blog. The next is actually not a Google Analytics product or tool. This is a tool called Crazy Egg. And I love this tool because it actually can give you a lot of insight into what people are interacting with on your website. So before I joined Google, I actually ran a analytics and optimization program for a higher education company. And one of the things that I was responsible for there was this career portal. And we had spent a whole lot of time and effort building out this new career portal for our students. And there was 3 main calls to action at the top of the page, or above the fold. And they were something like a resume builder and a job search, and I forget what the last one was, but these 3 main calls to action, this is what we wanted people to interact with on the site. So we launched this page. We saw a whole lot of people come to this page through our data. We knew people were coming, they were getting there, which was awesome, but we weren't seeing very many people actually go out to or interact with the resources that we cared so much about on this page, those 3 main calls to action. And we were scratching our heads and we couldn't figure out why. And so our Google Analytics data wasn't really pointing it out. It was just telling us the links that people were clicking out to and that they weren't really clicking out there. But what we did was we put Crazy Egg on top of this page. And we actually tracked how many people or where people were clicking on the page. What we saw was that people were clicking on these resources. These resources had a nice big image and then some text below. But the problem was that they were clicking on the image, and we had forgotten to make these images clickable. So they weren't finding the tiny little link in the text below to actually click out to the resource. That was a really valuable insight for us, and it was a quick insight to gain and a very quick fix to make that actually then helped pick up the impact and reach of this site and of these main resources that we were driving. The other thing I really like about Crazy Egg is that you can actually choose what these little dots, this confetti that you see on your page, this is specifically the confetti report, which is my favorite report in there, what they mean. So you can see that it's checked for refer, but you can change this to all of these different things, and these dots will change based on what you are looking at. I really like the time to click one, so you can actually sort out what people are clicking on within a couple of seconds versus much longer on your website. So if you haven't checked out Crazy Egg, I'd recommend checking it out. Okay, Naughty 9B, this is a second part of this one, is you don't listen to your customers qualitatively. And for this, we are going to use surveys to track our voice of customer. And this is really great, specifically for testing tiebreakers. So Google has a survey tool. A lot of other companies have them too for surveys. Ours is called Google Consumer Surveys or Google Surveys. And it's very simple to set up. If you're using Google Tag Manager, there's a tag for Google Consumer Surveys. And all you have to do is enter your survey ID and it will pop up on your site based on the triggers that you've set it for. But you can ask things like, how satisfied are you with this experience? Did you find what you're looking for? So I've actually ran multiple tests where the quantitative data has been fairly flat, but the qualitative data told us that one experience was giving our users a much better overall user experience than the other. And that gave us the reasoning we needed to go ahead and launch that as the winner of the test. All right, my last tip for you, my last naughty, is that you don't put it all together to drive real value for your business. And so how we fix that is we use our analytics data, our integrations, and testing to drive impact for your business. So for example, this is Light in the Box. It's an online retailer. They sell a lot of different things on their site. And I've gone in and I've looked for digital cameras. And I'm really interested. I'm doing a lot of searching here and reading and reviewing. And I might have even added one to my cart, but I haven't purchased yet. So if we switch gears to the analyst side of this, as the analyst, I want to analyze this flow. I see a lot of people are coming to my website. They are looking for digital cameras. Some have even added to their cart, but very, very few have checked out. This is called a custom funnel report in Google Analytics. It's part of Analytics 360. It's a very powerful report. So if you have Analytics 360, I'd highly suggest using this. And the reason I love it so much is that if you actually click any one of those red drop-down arrows from any step, in this case, we'll click from add to cart, it'll say, hey, you've had 2,346 people who added to their cart, but they did not check out. Do you want to create a new segment and remarket to them? Well, of course, we're all good analysts, we're good marketers, we want to bring these people back and we want them to check out and buy this digital camera. So I mentioned earlier that you could use your audiences in Optimize. So not only can you remarket to the users who added to cart but didn't check out with ads, and perhaps you want to add some kind of a messaging like get free shipping on your next order as an incentive to come back. But you can also use that exact same audience to target an experience to them when they land on your website so that they have similar content, similar messaging from ad all the way back to website. So in this case, we could serve some kind of an experience that says, welcome back, get free shipping on your next order when they come back. So I've talked about a lot of different things today, and I know it was pretty quick, so we have some time to answer questions. I just wanted to remind you some of the naughties and some of the nices that we talked about here, and here's a few more. And with that, I am going to say thank you very much for having me, and I would love to take your questions.
Okay, well, that was brilliant. I actually learned quite a lot. I really enjoyed a lot of these things because I felt like you went into pain points that people aren't necessarily aware of. So fantastic, especially towards, you know, the shopping time where everyone's going to be shopping for stuff for the holidays. So great time to brush analytics and make sure that you're tracking things correctly and that everything's set up the right way. We do have quite a few questions.
Awesome.
Yes, let's start. So Ross wants to know if there's any advantage in page load speed in limiting the scroll events sent.
If there's any advantage in page load speed of limiting the scroll events that are sent?
Well, he basically wants to know if there's, I think, if I understood correctly, you can correct me, you want to know if there's any advantage in actually limiting where the scroll ends, right? Where you're setting the scroll to end. I think that's what he meant. So
yeah, sure. think of a few cases why that would be useful. Let's say that you have a long scrolling page, but maybe the bottom third of it is actually just links out to other things or ads or different content that you don't really care about from a content perspective. So you could actually, determine that when it got to that point, that was 100% in your mind. So if you that way, you totally could.
Awesome. Okay. Joe says that he uses Hotjar for form interaction analysis. It provides time interacted with the field. Could one also do that with GTM or Google Analytics? I also use Hotjar to do that, by the way.
Awesome. I've never used Hotjar, so I'm not super familiar there, but I did talk about form field tracking with event tracking and using Google Tag Manager to understand that form field interaction and send that event. I think that there's probably a lot more that you could do in terms of when you're triggering and how long you want something to be or be interacted with before you trigger that event. So I think that there's definitely things that you could do to get more insight there.
Yeah, I actually really love the idea of being able to see not just the people that are submitting forms, for example, and being able to actually see the people that tried to fill in a form but couldn't get it, didn't understand what was going on, left. Great way to understand that you need to optimize a certain field or maybe the whole form. It's a great bit. Alex says, can you share the code you use on the form field interactions?
I cannot share the actual code because it's just a Google Tag Manager setup. And we're just using like a JavaScript listener to understand when somebody has actually interacted with that field. But I think probably Simo or somebody else has blogged about this, so you should be able to find something out there. If you can't, I'll look and maybe I'll blog about it.
Okay. Cool. So Scott says that he'd like to add an event tracking to a newsletter that they basically many people can subscribe to their newsletter within different forms. So they have a form in the footer and they have a form in an article page or in the middle of the page. So should it be one event with different categories or should they set it up differently? Oh, we lost Krista. That's a shame. It's not really going to help us answer the question. Well, hopefully she'll be back soon. Yeah, it was a real tough question, so she just left. Paul says, scroll events are sent after page has loaded. Oh, there's Krista. Let me add her back. Maybe that's what you're asking. Yeah, I think that was what he was asking. Ah, yeah, and Ross did say that was what he was asking. Hopefully we'll have, you're back.
I'm back. It was a really tough question, sorry. I think that is a great question. And I would actually highly recommend, I've done this multiple times myself, using the same category and the same action, because the action is that they are submitting this form or whatever it is that they're interacting with. But the distinguishing factor here. So the label could be that it was in the top nav bar or the bottom of the page or something like that. And that way you can actually, when you're analyzing, look at your form submits action dimension in your report and add a secondary dimension to break that down by the label to see which of those actual form fields are getting the most interaction out of that total number.
Awesome. Fantastic. Next, we have Joey, who wants to know, Michelle wants to know, in regards to event tracking, is this similar to what a lot of the opt-in tool metrics reports do? I hope I understood the question correctly. Michelle, if you can clarify, or did you understand?
I didn't understand. I don't know what an opt-in tool is, but
okay.
event tracking,
we'll wait for Michelle.
Analytics that you have to do in addition to your standard tracking of just them. As I showed, you get a lot of additional value for analysis by implementing event tracking.
Jen says she's always wondering about tools or templates for creating easy to understand weekly and monthly website stats reports for her C-level suits. Any recommendations for tools, Excels, templates, something of the sort?
Yeah, totally. Google actually has another product called Data Studio. It's our data visualization platform. And Data Studio is it has native integrations with Google Analytics, but we know that's all your data lives, so it has integrations with AdWords and DoubleClick and Google Spreadsheets. And really cool, we recently just announced something called the Community Connectors Program, which basically allows you to build a connector of your own or use one of many, I think there are about 600 that have developed to connect to pretty much any other type of data set. You can bring in your Facebook data, your Twitter data, use Salesforce data, all in one place to have this visual tool to build your reports on. And in that tool, there's a lot of templates that come out of the box. So there's templates for things like YouTube reporting and for AdWords reporting and various things. So you can copy these templates and then make them your own. Maybe there's a few of those report widgets that you really like and some others that you want to. So it's a great starting ground.
Awesome. So Joey wants to know, how can we make sure that the data that we're collecting is reliable?
Great question. Google, I can't stress this enough. Google Analytics or any analytics platform is not set it and forget it. You have to constantly make sure that your tags are firing correctly, that you're collecting them. This means that sometimes you might have to do a site audit to understand if what you're actually doing on your website is coming through in your data. I can't go into all the details about how you would do a site audit now because there are, a lot of things there. I've certainly blogged about it. Others have blogged about it. We have courses in our Analytics Academy about how you would do some of these types of things. But what I would stress is that you do need to constantly revisit this for platform out there.
Agreed. Okay, I think we're out of time for questions, but I just really wanted to thank you, Krista. I learned a lot. I know the people here have been saying that they've learned a ton. Yes, a recording will be available. That was like the number one question today. So a recording will be available in a few days with a transcript, show notes, everything that you need. I'll be emailing it out to you guys. And next week, I'm actually doing a webinar for you guys. It's going to be either Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not sure yet. I need to finalize that. But we're going to be talking about something really cool. So hopefully you will join me too. Krista, just tell us quickly, where can people find you, follow you, ask you questions and stuff like that?
Yeah, awesome. So I'm very accessible on Twitter. If you want to follow me, ask me questions, hear about what I'm tweeting about, anytime I blog, I tweeted about it. Krista Seiden on Twitter. And then I also blog at kristaseiden.com. So those are great ways to connect.
Perfect. Thank you all. I'm so happy to see that you all loved the event today. Have a great evening or a great day. And I'll see you next week. Bye.